All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to Tappy's 10 Things Parents Need to Know About Why We Immunize training. We are happy you're here. Thank you for spending your lunch hour with us today. We have many people registered to attend from all over the state, not only Pima and Maricopa County, which we always see big numbers, but we also have several people today from Apache and Cochise counties. In fact, all 15 counties in Arizona are represented today. We have a lot of nurses, medical assistants, social workers, a lot of vaccine specialists and program coordinators, lots of different professions represented today. So as a reminder, let's go to the next slide. Please keep your microphone or phone on mute unless you are speaking. We really encourage you to use the chat box to ask any questions. All of the handouts and videos and links and downloads, those will all be available on our website after the training today. So don't feel like you have to write everything down. You can always rewatch this recording or find the links on our website. Next slide. So TAPI is the Arizona Partnership for Immunization. We are the statewide vaccine coalition. We focus a lot on immunizing people and keeping Arizona healthy overall. We foster community wellness and advocate for good public policy. Next slide. As a disclosure, presenters have no financial interest or relationship with the commercial supporters of this activity. Next slide. I wanted to introduce our presenters today. We have two excellent presenters. Kai McKinstry has a degree in public health and is a certified health education specialist. She's also the parent of several little kids and is very passionate about keeping kids and our communities healthy. Our second presenter is Wendy O'Donnell. She is the vaccine communicator at the Arizona Department of Health Services. She is the parent of 3 kids and always loves talking about vaccines. She also has a degree in public health and is a master's certified health education specialist. Okay, so take it away, ladies.
Good morning, everyone. Miss Wendy, if you want to go back one slide for me. Or what? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So good morning. My name is Kai McKinstry. As Laura stated earlier, I am a certified health education specialist. And the exact number of little kids is 4. I have 4 little ones, 3 and under, 2 sets of twins. I've got 2 2-year-olds and 2 3-year-olds. So this is definitely something that I'm excited about. I'm passionate about. I'm really happy you're all here because this is important information and you can do a lot with it. So some of the things that we want to do today are we want to discuss the 10 science-centered, evidence-based concepts about why parents should vaccinate their children. We also want to answer some common questions and address some myths and misconceptions that you all might be hearing in the field. And we want to give you credible vaccine online resources, both for yourself and for parents and anybody else that you interact with that might be able to provide education to any type of caretaker of little ones and adults for that matter. The goal is that our social workers, our teachers, our health educators, community outreach specialists, vaccine coordinators, medical assistants, and parents become knowledgeable on vaccine benefits. And this will drive parents to make more informed decisions on their intent to vaccinate their children. We will have some quizzes throughout the presentation, so make sure to put your answers in the chat box. We have enabled the chat box so that everybody can put information in both to the hosts and the panelists as well as to others. So feel free to bounce off of each other. Please be active in the chat. That makes this so much more enjoyable for everyone. We have a relatively small group today, only 40-something people on so far. We're expecting more. So there's a ton of great knowledge out there for everyone. I promise you, if you've heard a myth or a misconception, someone else has heard it too. So please feel free to bring it to the table. Okay, we're going to jump right in here. I want to show you this quick video about some things we've learned about vaccination.
We're not hearing that, Wendy. I wonder if it's because I was muted. Let me try again.
I want to tell you about a time in American history so that it never repeats itself.
So it never repeats itself. It was a harrowing time.
A heart-wrenching time. I could hear my mother warn me, Seal, don't go out and play.
My family was ravaged. Thousands and thousands died. I was scared.
So scared. And then one day,
And then one day, there was hope.
Before vaccines, there were few ways to help protect against deadly illnesses. Diseases like measles,
Meningitis,
diphtheria, Hib, whooping cough, or polio, which killed my grandma's youngest son. Without vaccines, these threats can reemerge. I'm here to tell my children to help protect their children. Get your kids vaccinated and keep them on schedule.
I never want my grandchildren to see what I saw.
Thanks, Wendy. So the real dilemma we have to face is that because of the effectiveness of vaccines over the last 50 to 75 years, people have forgotten about the diseases those vaccines were developed to fight. So this is a phenomenon called vaccine amnesia or public health amnesia, where a public health initiative like vaccination becomes so successful that people forget how bad it once was. And we can see things like measles cases starting to pop up more and more across the country. Next slide, Wendy. Thank you. Okay, so as an example, this map shows exactly what we're talking about with public health amnesia. Measles, which we thought was eradicated in 2000, made a comeback in 2014 with new cases popping up in primarily unvaccinated communities. Unvaccinated communities are those that don't meet the threshold needed to keep disease at bay. So still 5 years later, we see in 2019, all of the states in dark blue reported at least one case of measles. So if you really look and count the states, there's 28 that are experiencing or that had experienced at least one measles case. That's more than half from a disease we believed to be eradicated. So the problem clearly persists. These outbreaks are a direct effect of low rates of immunization, and this shows that even when we haven't seen a single case of a disease in 14 years, that does not mean it has gone away. Continued immunization is the only way to prevent these diseases long term. Epidemiological trends are showing that right now with pertussis, which is whooping cough, we are starting to see recirculation, I should say, of whooping cough or pertussis. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so there are what we're calling hotspots, and kids in the US hotspots are most vulnerable to vaccine preventable diseases. The ADHS does require that every school report once a year on the coverage levels of kids enrolled in school. So vaccine coverage levels. This information is made available to the public and parents can be informed about coverage levels. Our schools used to be at about a 95% coverage rate, but over the last 5 to 6 years, the level of protection has begun to drop as the number of vaccine exemptions have begun to increase. I'm sure you've met a family or two who wants to take advantage of some type of vaccine exemption, but like this is happening a lot. So some schools have a coverage rate of about 40%. Arizona has been identified as a hot spot because of low coverage levels. So if you look at the little map there, you can see the dark red is 5.1 to 30%. And that's the majority or a huge swath of Arizona. Okay, So, information piece number 2, and I'm sorry I'm making weird sounds because we're gonna watch a video that's tough to watch, I'm not gonna lie. I want you to watch the full video. I don't want you to mute. I don't want you to, I want you to try to stick through it. The data shows that these diseases are still circulating. However, I could argue that if you've never experienced some of these diseases, you can fall into the trap of believing that these diseases no longer exist, or that they'll probably never touch you personally. You personally, a little one that you know, a friend of the family or neighbor, etc. This video, it can be hard to watch, but I'm gonna let it play for the full 2 minutes because I think it's important to really take in the impact that it has. Wendy, we don't have sound again.
Oh, that's strange.
Not that I really want to hear this, but
No. Hold on. Oh. No sound?
no, ma'am.
I don't know what to do. I'm not muted. And the volume is up and you can hear me.
I can
When
hear you.
you shared your screen, did you enable audio sharing?
Um,
The little box at the bottom, on the bottom left?
yeah. Well, you heard the last video, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Just let me pause share. Sorry, guys. And then share sound. Do I optimize?
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's not letting me click those. Okay.
If you stop sharing completely.
Okay. Sorry, guys. You guys are getting the real. Okay. PowerPoint. It's still not letting me select the share sound and optimize for video clip.
Okay. I'm just pulling it up real quick. Let me see if I can share.
I wonder if maybe before you were just hearing it through my speakers and that's why I had to unmute.
Well, Malika, can you make me the host? It's not letting me share the sound either, or make Wendy the host, either one of us.
Weird. Okay. Yeah. Let me do that. Hold on.
So sorry, we tried to work out technical issues before, but things always come up. You never know with computers.
So I made you the host. So hopefully it lets you.
That is not letting me either. It's like blacked out. Okay, so let's just skip the videos. If you, Wendy, you want to go back and we'll try to figure it out on the back end. But if you want to go ahead and share your screen, Wendy, and
Okay.
we'll skip that video. Kai, you did a great job describing what the video is like.
Oh, thank you so much. Somehow you guys left out. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, what have you. So okay, I will just give you a brief rundown of what you missed there. What we're listening to is a little one with whooping cough, which is a vaccine preventable illness. And this teeny tiny baby is, I mean, she's really, really struggling to get a good breath in. She's having a really hard time. There are long moments where you can tell that she can't get a good breath in. I don't know. I mean, as a parent of very little ones, and I know I've got tons of other parents on here of little ones, really, really difficult to watch. And it's one of those things that we just want to make sure people understand. These diseases are here. They're people are getting diagnosed with whooping cough or pertussis every day. And we could probably try to help put a stop to that. So number 2, vaccine preventable diseases still exist. Vaccine preventable diseases like measles, mumps, pertussis, and pneumonia still infect and cause sickness in children in the USA each year. Thanks, Wendy. Trivia question. Okay, get your little thingies ready, get on your keyboards, get in the chat. The US had cases of which of these vaccine preventable diseases in 2022? A, polio, B, measles, C, pertussis, D, none. It's not that one. Or E, all of the above. Let's see it in the chat box. Let's go. Yeah, looks good. Lots of E's, couple B's. Very nice. Lots of E's. I need a couple more. Yep, there was a measles at Disneyland. That's B, exactly. I see an A, which is polio. I need like 3 more. Like 3 more. Oh, Fernando, thank you. Excellent. I see tons of E's, and that is the correct answer. So in 2022, the US had cases of polio, measles, and pertussis, which is all of the above. Great work, y'all. Miss Laura will choose someone in the chat who will have won a prize as an incentive for participation. So thank you so much. All right, so tip number 3, outbreaks are preventable when parents make the decision to vaccinate. So when we immunize 95% of the population against a vaccine preventable disease, we can prevent an outbreak from happening. We need a community effort to protect our children. We call this community immunity or herd immunity. So the way we have traditionally prevented outbreaks was to keep 90% of the population immunized against these diseases. If 90% of the people if 90% of the people have immunity, the disease can't spread through the community. It's also important that our youngest kids are immunized before entering school. This protects the community around them. It's referred to as herd immunity, like I stated, and we're attempting to keep our communities healthy, and the best way to do that is to vaccinate. I think it's easiest to think about community immunity in terms of like a fence. So think about those of us with immunizations as planks in a sort of fence. And together, if enough of us are immunized, surrounding one person who's not immunized, because maybe they're too young or they medically can't be immunized, then they're protected by the fence. So when a disease comes up, it'll hit the fence. So those of us who are vaccinated, and those immunized people will not get sick and they won't be able to spread the disease. So this protects under-immunized individuals. Outbreaks happen when there's too many holes in the fence, and a disease just floats right through it. Once it infects an unimmunized person, it also puts other unimmunized people at higher risk. Okay, number 4. Excuse me. Okay, number 4 is vaccines work. This is a fun little graphic. It is busy, but I think a lot of us here are going to find it really interesting because this is what we're passionate about. But first and foremost, vaccines are studied. They're studied again, and they're studied again. They're studied over and over. And Wendy's going to talk about that a little bit coming up here. Vaccines are followed to see how well they're working, and they're tested and updated as needed to work even better. There is a cool graphic coming up. Wendy will talk about it more. But we want to make sure you have the hard evidence that vaccines work. Once we have a vaccine against a disease, we've been able to eliminate, eradicate, or decrease numbers of cases to almost 0% after this vaccine's been introduced. So vaccines are researched, they're monitored, and they're followed in the community, they're tested, and they're updated. So we're not still giving like a 1917 vaccine. Everything has been updated and works better now. The vaccines we use today, the vaccines we use today are not the same ones that were originally developed. So once it's approved for use, it's still constantly tested in the lab. I wanted to show you just some of the things on this graphic here, like for example, smallpox, which is honestly like a huge public health success. It's a really great one to keep coming back to. Smallpox was eradicated in 1980, and we were able to decrease incidence of smallpox by 100%. So it has been eradicated. Diphtheria, the last outbreak was in the 1970s. So we're going to say it's been decreased by 99.9%. Measles, although we were at a 99.9% rate in 2000, which isn't 100, we did see those incidences pop back up. Okay, we're good to move on. Sorry, Wendy. All right. This is a really cool statistic. Vaccines save an estimated 42,000 lives every year in the US alone, which is 3 times more than seatbelts and child restraints combined. So according to the this is according to the CDC, excuse me. So think about this for a minute. Choosing not to vaccinate your kid is like putting them in a car with no seatbelt or child restraint, which I personally can't imagine because my kids are feral. So, you know, they don't stay in a seat. They're gonna be hopping out of the seat. I just, you know, it's for my peace of mind as well, a car seat. And so is a vaccine. So most of the time your kids are probably gonna be fine, but because statistically, how often do you get in a car accident? But maybe you're only driving, you know, 2 miles. Maybe it only takes a single incident for a seatbelt or a child restraint to be worthwhile in saving your kid's life. So similarly, it only takes a single exposure to a disease that you can't see for your kid to become ill with one of these vaccine preventable diseases. And the long-term effects on their health can be serious, and that's if they survive. The last one I'll go over with you is that vaccine offers protection to us, sometimes in different ways. So newborns receive some immunity from their mother, but it wears off when they're still very young. Some people can't get vaccinated if they're too sick or they have allergies, for example, and vaccinating you and your family helps protect them, which is exactly what we were talking about with our slats of offense. Getting shots offers protection that will help your child's immune system fight when they are exposed to diseases. So vaccines protect us from getting the actual disease, but newborns who are too young to get vaccinated are protected by their mother's vaccines. This is the first line of protection, but it does begin to wear off at as early as 2 months. So it's why there's a schedule that starts when the baby is 2 months old to continue the protection. Some people can't get vaccines. They're either too sick or they have allergies, specific allergies, not just any allergy. These people are protected by those around them that get vaccinated, just like in our fence analogy a few slides ago. Just as a side note, I think that you should know that only approximately 1 in a million children have a true allergic reaction to a vaccine. Sometimes people get swelling or a rash or start to feel sick and they think that's an allergic reaction, but a true allergic reaction is severe and incredibly rare. The CDC's researched the best time to give vaccines to offer the maximum benefit, so we should follow the recommendations on schedule. And I will be the first to say that when my babies were born, I, who have, you know, been doing this for a while and received lots of incredible resources, was a little hesitant when I saw them, you know, poking my twins. Just 2 kids is a lot of shots. And I even talked to my pediatrician about like how maybe we need to do an alternate schedule, but she swiftly corrected me in the kindest, most direct way. She reminded me that I know what I know and let me know that that preference would be for me and would not be in their best interest. So it is really truly best to stick to that vaccination schedule wherever possible. Miss Wendy, I'd like to turn it over to you if I may.
Yes, let me turn all my stuff back on. Here I am again. Okay, thanks, Kai. So reason number 6, vaccine antibodies act as personal ninjas to protect from the actual disease. So it's really great to kind of think of your immune system as your protector, and vaccines are giving your immune system the tools to be able to ward off all these diseases that you could be exposed to. you hear people talk about like, oh my gosh, kids get so many more vaccines than they used to, and it's dangerous, and we shouldn't be doing this to our children. But if you actually look at it, and Kai touched on it earlier, the vaccines that are used today, based on science and refining, refining the science that goes into these vaccines, we're exposed to 305 antigens to protect against 14 diseases by age 2. And you can compare that with the antigens from 30 years ago, and that was 3,000 antigens, and that protected against 8 diseases. The benefit of having a vaccine is that it prepares your body, so when you are exposed to this disease, it has the tools to fight it off. It also prevents you from getting sick and getting the actual disease, which could take months, years. Sometimes people don't come back from these diseases. We've heard the awful news of a few pediatric deaths from flu this year already, and it's so terrible. And I can't even imagine, I can't even imagine that happening. And it's so sad. And there's a way though that we can protect those the smallest around us, and of course that is by getting vaccinated. So all of the research that is done over the years is really to help make these vaccines safer and more effective. And Kai touched on, the timing of getting vaccines. And it is very specific, and, it's set up for a reason. That's when your body has the best immune response to that vaccine. And also vaccines are prevention, right? So you want to get them before you're exposed to the actual disease. So following that CDC recommended schedule is really going to give you the best protection over, your lifetime, really. Okay, we got another great trivia question. So this one is, what vaccine is recommended during pregnancy? Is it A, pertussis with the Tdap vaccine, B, flu, C, COVID, D would be flu and COVID, and E, all of the above. So go ahead and put your answer in the chat. And I'll just give you a minute for that. A few more people come. Answers are rolling in.
Looks good.
Great.
Look at that. Y'all are smart.
So yes, the answer is E, all of the above. It's wonderful that recommendations are always changing and being updated to meet what is currently, the scientific best practice. I know when I was pregnant with my first, which would have been 9 years ago, she's going to be 9 pretty soon. It was Tdap and flu too. Flu has been around for a while, but I remember even then the Tdap was still it had been recommended for years and years, but it was kind of a slow uptake. So even from her to my son, who was born in May of 21, I was able to get all 3. And that definitely gave me peace of mind, knowing that he had that little bit of protection from me. As Kai had mentioned, we get our first vaccine from our moms. That definitely gave me peace of mind in, what was a pretty scary time. So I jumped the gun a little. Kai mentioned it, and we do this a lot. We kind of mention it and then say someone else is going to talk about it, and then we talk about it and we talk about it some more, because hopefully the more times you hear it and in different ways, that the more it kind of you can relate to it, and it kind of makes sense to you. So we get our first vaccines from our moms. When mothers get the Tdap vaccine in pregnancy, they reduce infant risk of pertussis by 91%, which is amazing. We're going to, I know Kai said this earlier, you guys were lucky you didn't get to hear that pertussis video earlier. It is heartbreaking to hear this baby struggling to breathe. And she had pertussis, and her airways are just so tiny. She just couldn't do it. So to be able to have that protection, and we also talk about, the fence of protection, that we want the community to build around that baby. So I definitely made sure I had my husband, all grandparents, all aunts and uncles. Made sure they got that pertussis vaccine as well, to help protect my new babies. Also flu, I have 2 flu season babies, so this was super important for me. And then COVID-19, this is one of the newer recommendations, but again, I was so happy and had that peace of mind. My daughter was in 1st grade, coming home from school, and it made all the difference, knowing that he had a tiny bit of protection from me, since I got vaccinated when I was pregnant. So these are all the ways that we can protect the most vulnerable.
Wendy, we're doing really well on time. Do you have any other anecdotal stories you want to share about COVID vaccines?
So as you guys saw, Laura was our introducer today from Tappy, and I always think about her daughter was born in. Sorry, Laura, this is
No,
your
go
story.
ahead.
Not really
Go
your
ahead.
story, but you're part of it. Her daughter was born. Was it January, Laura?
Yes, January 2021. She's almost 3, but she was born at the height of the pandemic. 11,000 COVID new cases every day when she was born.
Yeah, and that was right before that was right when the vaccine was being rolled out. And even at that time, I was talking to my OBGYN asking, can I get the vaccine? And at that point, I had made up my mind that I was going to, and she said, sure, you can. It wasn't a blanket recommendation at that point. So I just think about how scary it must have been for you, Laura, when I had that kind of added knowledge, added protection of having two doses of the vaccine before my son was born, just a few months later. So it's just really is amazing, the scientific advancements that were made so quickly. And I know that scares people. But when we talk about how vaccines are created, which we will talk about later in this presentation. I know we keep saying that, but it's really quite fascinating, and just the difference that it made in those first few months after the baby was born. Like I said, I had kids coming home, small children coming home from school, sharing, of course, all of their germs, which they love to do. So it just kind of gave me that peace of mind. And I don't know, Laura, if you want to add anything about your experience those first few months after having her.
So my baby was born medically fragile. She had some health issues. And so if she were to have contracted COVID as a newborn, it would have been very devastating to her health. So our family, my husband and I, and then our other kids, we all got the vaccines that we could, which was flu. And then as soon as we were able to get vaccinated against COVID, then we did. The youngest children, the babies, under 5 years old, they could not get COVID, and they were the last set of people that could get the COVID vaccine. And so we did get her vaccinated as soon as it was available for her. And then a few months later, our family did get COVID, and we actually had no idea that the baby had it because she had no symptoms, no issues. Some of my other kids were very ill, but she was not. And so we were so thankful that although I could not get it during pregnancy, we all were able to get it as soon as possible after that. And our family kind of had to shut down our life for a long time until we could get vaccinated and protect the baby. So yeah, happy to answer any questions in the chat if you have any more.
So we definitely we're in the height of flu season. Actually, this week is National Influenza Vaccination Week. So if you have not gotten your vaccine yet, this is a great time to do it. It's not too late. People think, oh, well, you know, we're already into the winter and it's almost Christmas, but this is the best time to do it, because if you are going to have those big holiday gatherings, you know, it takes about 2 weeks or so for your body to build that immunity after you get the vaccine. So this is a great time to do it, to prepare for those holiday gatherings. Also, since you're there, might as well get the COVID vaccine as well. It is completely safe to get both at the same time. Whoops, I just gave you a freebie. Can someone get a flu vaccine and a COVID vaccine in the same visit? So trivia, is it yes, no, or not sure? They'll do one in each arm. One might be a little bit more sore than the other, but it's definitely, I mean, who has time to go back for another vaccine? You know, it's so easy to just get them both at the same time. I know the county clinics are doing it for kids under 6 if you need that, if you know their pediatrician office does not offer it, which mine doesn't, which is such a bummer to me. So the county is a great resource for that. All the county health departments do it, so it's really wonderful. It just saves a lot of time. All right, and so of course the answer was yes. So number 8, this is something that I think is super important, because you hear this kind of noise in the background, but doctors and science overwhelmingly support vaccination. The American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Family Physicians, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, America's Nurses Association, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and March of Dimes all strongly support vaccinations. It is overwhelmingly the scientific community knows what a value this vaccines are. I think you hear the random, oh, you know, well, this doctor doesn't think, you know, thinks they're bad and all of these things, and wouldn't recommend that we get them. And a lot of times you can look and see what are their ulterior motives. There are a lot of, you know, online doctors that are trying to sell a different something else, a different cure, different prevention. And that's one of the things that you can look for when you're trying to decide what is a reputable source, is if they're trying to sell something to you on their website, maybe don't take what they say as the absolute truth. They're trying to convince you of something to sell something to you. So that's just something that I always try to tell people, to say, oh no, you know, if you take colloidal silver, it will prevent all of these things. And I do not know the research behind colloidal silver. I know that people use it for things. But if someone's trying to sell you something, then maybe look for a couple sources that back up those claims, because if you go to the CDC website, you will see they're not trying to sell you anything. They are in the business of keeping us healthy. I think a word of mouth recommendation from a doctor, a provider, is the best recommendation there is. If I go somewhere and they say, I vaccinated my children, my grandchildren, all of my friends, all the community, then I can trust that if it's safe enough for them, that it's safe enough for my family. And then number 9, off to school equals up to date on shots. There are requirements in all 50 states that there are certain vaccines that children get before they enter childcare, preschool, or kindergarten, and then they keep up to date with throughout the span of their school career. There's an important distinction I'd like to make, though. We talk about school like required immunizations, and then we talk about the CDC recommended. And it almost sounds like the required ones are more important because they're required. And then the recommendation is just kind of, oh, it's recommended. It's nice, but, and in this case, it's, I don't want to say it's the opposite because the school required ones are still important, but the CDC recommended schedule is more robust and includes more vaccines. And that's because the state required vaccines are ones that our lawmakers actually vote on. And I'm not sure if you were all following, the news and everything when the COVID-19 vaccine was first created and put out there. Our state legislature actually voted to make sure that it would never be required for a kid to get the COVID-19 vaccine for school. So there's political reasons behind these requirements, which don't necessarily take into account the best health of a child or a school or a community. So always the CDC recommended schedule is what is recommended by, as I just mentioned, the health providers, us immunization specialists and professionals, and just the community as a whole. That's going to be your best bet for protection. And then one thing I think it's super important to think about, we always think about kids when we're talking about vaccines because they definitely get a lot in those first couple years. But vaccines are something that are required for your lifespan. So even if you are past school age, into high school, into college, into adulthood, into retirement, these are all times that you want to make sure that you're up to date with your recommended immunizations, just to, again, give you the best the ability to be the healthiest that you can be, and to help keep your community strong and healthy and provide protection to everybody. I meant to mention this a little bit earlier, but the flu shot, National Influenza Vaccination Week is this week. You as professionals, it's also super important to make sure that you're up to date, not only to protect your clients and those that you're working with from whatever germs you're bringing in, but also to protect yourself from whatever germs you're being exposed to when you're there. If we think about who's going to do, of course nobody wants to get sick, and it's not fun when you're laid up at home for a week or two because you have the flu. But who's there to help your clients when that happens? Is there a system in place, or are things just kind of being missed because you're not able to do that? Not that you have to be with them 100% of the time and you're the only person, but it definitely helps keep those services continuing and make sure that you are healthy and preventing that transfer of disease from you to client or client to you. So it's super important that you're up to date with your immunizations, and especially now during respiratory illness season, all recommended vaccines. It's just really important to get those. So we're going to try something here. Give me a minute. We're going to try and see if we can get this video going. Do
you want to try on your computer first? And then
Sure.
If not, let's try the backup.
Okay. And I don't know. Oops.
Aren't you glad you don't have scurvy?
It's working.
47, in the first medical trial ever performed, Scottish physician James Lind found out that eating citrus fruits could cure scurvy. Now, today we know this works because citrus contains high levels of vitamin C. In fact, ascorbic acid, a common name for vitamin C, comes from the Latin for not scurvy. By issuing rations of lemon juice to sailors, the British Navy was able to pretty much eliminate the disease until the late 1800s, when polar explorers suddenly began to see scurvy again. The copper pots holding their lime juice had destroyed the vitamin C, but they were pretty confused. So, despite James Lind's experiments 150 years before, citrus fruits became the enemy. And when Robert Falcon Scott set out to reach the South Pole in 1911, he carried the finest in canned meat products, biscuits, chocolate, tea, and zero vitamin C. A Norwegian team beat them to the pole by 5 weeks, and during their sad journey home, Scott and his team perished in a blizzard, sick and weak from what was probably scurvy. It had been so long since anyone had seen this disease, the British had forgotten how to prevent it. When we create such effective solutions, we can forget how serious the problems were. Thankfully, people today don't die of scurvy or polio. Since the introduction of Jonas Salk's polio vaccine in 1955, the disease has been nearly eradicated from the earth.
The thing to remember is that this is a continuous process.
Compare the 358 infections reported in 2014 to the 1940s, when 500,000 people per year were paralyzed or died from polio infections. Vaccines work. Our immune system is on constant alert against germy baddies, with millions of white blood cells each on the lookout for specific infections. When an immune cell meets its target, it replicates itself, and this clone army sends a barrage of protein weapons called antibodies to label the trash for cleanup. And after the infection is gone, so-called memory cells stick around, ready to mount a fast attack in case this germ shows up again. This is how we develop immunity, and it works pretty well, since we're all still alive. But even with all that, some super bad germs can take us out before our immune sentries have had time to call up their clone army. This is especially true for young children. Their immune systems are fresh out of basic training. Thankfully, we have vaccines, which are made of tiny pieces or weakened versions of viruses or bacteria. They let our immune system see what the bad guys look like and recruit those all-important memory cells before we ever have to actually see the real enemy. Thanks to vaccines, the US was able to eliminate measles in the year 2000. But in recent years, as more and more parents are refusing to vaccinate their children or are vaccinating them later than what doctors recommend, it's back. In most states, more than 90% of children are vaccinated, but that's not enough to keep a disease like measles at bay. In our episode about Ebola, we talked about a number called R0, the basic reproduction number for a disease, or the number of people infected by one person in a susceptible population. For Ebola, that number is low, but for measles, each sick person will infect up to 18 others. But luckily, vaccines can change that. The fraction of people who are vaccinated or immune can lower the reproduction number below 1, which means the disease is disappearing. 90% of unprotected people who come in contact with somebody who has measles, even just breathing the same air, will become infected. To control a super contagious virus like that, the vaccination rate has to be 95% or above. Now, right now, the US is lagging behind, and measles is making a comeback. The Guardian put together a simulation of just how this so-called herd immunity works. When enough of a population is vaccinated, even if it's not 100%, the herd can protect the unprotected. With vaccine refusal on the rise, our herd immunity is breaking down. Preventable diseases like measles and whooping cough have become our scurvy. Most of us don't know anyone with polio, and measles. It's not that bad, right? Well, yes, it is that bad. Before the age of vaccines, millions of people were killed by diseases that today are just bad memories. Vaccines have let us develop a sort of generational amnesia. Today, we expect our children to grow up healthy, and we're lucky that we don't appreciate just how dangerous these diseases are. Like science writer Seth Mnookin says, vaccines are victims of their own success because of stories like Andrew Wakefield's discredited study wrongly linking vaccines and autism, and the news media's obsession with pictures of crying, terrified children being poked with needles. People are nervous about vaccines. This anxiety isn't new, though. When Edward Jenner in 1798 saw that milkmaids didn't catch smallpox, he realized that because they'd been exposed to the similar cowpox disease, they were immune. And based on this, he developed an early smallpox vaccine by inoculating humans with the cow virus. In fact, the word vaccine itself has bovine origins. Still, as far back as 1802, critics were claiming that the smallpox inoculation would turn you into a cow. Vaccines don't come without risk. Nothing does. But on average, fewer than 1 in a million people will experience a dangerous reaction to common vaccines. Car accidents, playing outside, even walking will injure more children. Vaccines are asking us to do something altruistic, to make a choice to protect not only ourselves and our children, but also those around us. Author Eulabis says that vaccines are one of the most empathetic things that we can do. A system that's based on people voluntarily using their bodies to protect other vulnerable people. That's something I hope we don't forget. Now, I'm a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor. It's natural to have questions about vaccines, and you should have a conversation with your medical professional. They want the best for you and yours. I will give you one prescription, though, and that's to subscribe so you can get a full dose of science every week. And if you want to read some amazing books about vaccines, check out Seth Mnookin's The Panic Virus and On Immunity by Eulabis. Links in the description. Stay curious. Today we know that citrus fruits cure scurvy because they contain high levels of vitamins. Citrus fruits cure scurvy.
Sorry about that. Trying to stop this presentation. Okay. Okay. So we just wanted to go into that explanation. I think it does a really good job of explaining how vaccines work, where they started, and just kind of the history of it. So that's a great video and you can kind of really understand it. So as Laura mentioned earlier, this will all of these resources will be posted, so you'll have access to them. So if that went a little too fast for you, you can definitely go back and watch it again. I've seen it many times, and I feel like I learn something new every time I watch it. So it's definitely worth a rewatch. Kai, did you want to add anything? I know we kind of switched it up a little bit right there.
No, I don't think so. I think even though there are some technical parts in there toward the end, that's for the fun nerds out there that really enjoy it. The gist of the message is phenomenal, and I have recommended in the past that if you have like a tablet that you interact with clients on, or a lot of offices have little TVs in their visit rooms now, that you utilize this resource and show it to parents and whomever else you might be working with that are in charge of these decisions for little ones.
Thanks. Okay. Oh. Okay. So I've touched on this already a little bit, but it's like I said, we're never going to just say something once. So I definitely want to go over this again. We used to talk a lot about, oh, it's flu season. So make sure you get your flu shot. That has kind of evolved, and definitely since science has caught up, as we've talked about before, there are new vaccines that are available to help tackle a lot of the illnesses that tend to increase during this time of year. So now we're calling it respiratory illness season. And that is all encompassing. So it's flu, COVID, and then of course, now RSV. So these are all diseases that could be very harmful for children and adults alike. So everybody, and now there are vaccines to address each one of these. Along with your annual flu vaccine, there's an updated COVID-19 vaccine that's available for 6 months and up. And if you have not gotten a COVID vaccine since September of this year, then you have not gotten the most recent one. I know it's a little complicated to keep up with, and hopefully this will be something that will become a little bit more seamless. And just as we get kind of the seasonal flu vaccine every year, there'll be something similar with COVID, so it's a little easier to keep track of. But there is an updated COVID-19 vaccine available now that if you haven't gotten since September, then this new one is updated since then. We also have a new RSV vaccine. And this vaccine right now is really for older adults and pregnant women. So if you're above 60 or if you're pregnant, you are able to get this vaccine. And then there's one for the very young kids. So those that are newborns up to 18 months. So these are definitely, if you have somebody in your life that fits into those age ranges, or if you work with people who fall into those, definitely encourage them to talk to their provider about that and the availability, and making sure that they are able to get those vaccines to, again, keep themselves protected through this respiratory illness season. Last year, I think RSV just kind of made itself known. If you'd never experienced RSV, no one in my family has ever had it, or that I've known of, I guess. But I know Kai's had, unfortunately, experience with RSV that affected her and her family. And so that's kind of how I knew about RSV, because I knew Kai and I knew that this had happened to her, and it was very scary. But last year, so many kids were getting it that it really kind of made news, and people kind of like, oh, RSV, I didn't even really know that was a thing. And now, fortunately, we have this vaccine that is available for the littlest ones, who are more likely to be hospitalized and have kind of severe complications from RSV. And then, of course, the older adults and pregnant women. I don't know if you want to add anything about that, Kai. Kind of put me on the spot.
Just that I very much wish that it was available when my second set of twins was born. They were born at 32 weeks. And so my littlest of my second set of twins ended up getting RSV when she was 6 weeks old, which means that she wasn't even gestationally 40 weeks yet. And I mean, thank God she really was a freaking rock star. And we did everything we could to just try to mitigate risk and keep others away, because there wasn't a vaccine available, not for myself or the grandparents or, family friends. So, I mean, she was hospitalized, and she's so tiny, and it was so scary. So I want to encourage people to become knowledgeable on this vaccine and its availability. RSV, holy cow, I mean, has made a huge resurgence last year and again this year. So this one is really kind of a godsend, and I would encourage you to take advantage of it.
Thanks, Kai. That was a really scary time. I remember. Stressful. Okay. And then flu vaccine. You guys are going to hear me keep talking about this. Everybody 6 months and older is eligible to get the flu vaccine. It can reduce the risk of severe flu-related illness, by 40 to 60%. So, something that I feel like maybe we don't talk about enough is that there's no such thing as 100% prevention. That is just, I mean, in public health, in anything, there's no such thing as 100%. But if you can reduce the risk of severe complications by 40 to 60%, I will definitely take those odds. It's like saying, a police officer shouldn't wear a bulletproof vest because it only protects his chest. That is still pretty important. You would want to protect your chest. That's a very, your whole body's important, but that's a high target area. Got some real important things in there. So that would be like a police officer going out into the line of duty without wearing a bulletproof vest, just because it's not 100%. It's like, well, no, you're never going to be able to have 100% protection. That shouldn't be a reason that you don't get the vaccine, though. We hear a lot of kind of misconceptions around the flu vaccine that have been around for a long time. Does anyone want to share any in the chat, any misconceptions that they hear about the flu vaccine? Either that maybe you believe yourself, that you hear your family members, that you hear colleagues or clients that you work with.
Anne said in the chat that one of the misconceptions is that it causes the flu, which I have also heard.
Yeah, that I feel like that's probably one of the most common ones. Which, so I have a few responses to that I will usually tell people if that comes up. One I say is that, anytime you get a vaccine, your body is building an immune response. So a lot of times afterwards, you might feel lethargic. Some people get like a low-grade fever. Maybe you're just kind of feeling icky for a few days. I try to frame it in a positive. That is a good thing. It means your body's having an immune response. It's building up that immune system, so that if you were exposed to the flu, it would know how to fight it better. The other thing is that sometimes people don't even think about getting the flu shot until they hear somebody close to them has the flu. So say you work in an office and then you hear, oh, Karen's out for a couple weeks because she has the flu, and then you're like, oh no, I haven't got my flu vaccine, I better go get it. But you worked with Karen just last week, so it could be that you were already exposed by the time you went and got the flu vaccine. Of course, that's not a reason to not get the flu vaccine if you're not having those symptoms, and it's always a good time to get the flu vaccine. But just, I feel like timing sometimes, people don't really think to get it until it like is directly in their sphere. So those are two of the responses that I have. I don't know, Kai, is there anything that any advice that you give to people when they say that?
My primary advice usually is what you've already stated, which is you may not feel well, but it is likely an immune response to your flu vaccine. It looks like Fernando mentioned also that it causes soreness, which is definitely true for a lot of people. And in that case, I usually like to say that the flu causes worse soreness more, very, very often. There are some other comments in here about autism, which we will definitely touch on in an upcoming slide here. Zelena and Ramon said, it gave my child autism, or it causes autism, and we're gonna cover that shortly.
Yes, in a way that will be a lot more informative than me just coming. We have an expert that's going to touch on that. So yes, thank you for sharing those. And then here's a little bit more about RSV. So these are the age ranges that we talked about: adults 60 and over. And there is an RSV vaccine, and this is something that you want to talk to your healthcare provider about. And then both the RSV vaccine given during pregnancy and then the RSV antibody given to the baby after birth. These are ways that we are protecting babies and the littlest ones. My sister had a baby in August, which was super exciting. And then I think it was the end of August, and literally like 3 weeks later, I heard about this RSV vaccine. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have to talk to your doctor about it. Like, please, please, please. And she has, and it's been really great that she's been able to have that resource, to, have that conversation with their pediatrician. This is her first baby too. So it's, it's important to protect all babies, but I think you're just so much more nervous with that first one that it's nice to have that peace of mind for sure. Okay. Anyone else? Did we touch on all the RSV, flu, COVID stuff?
I think there's one more COVID slide, and we got about
Oh,
25
yeah.
minutes left of our session here.
Okay. In other words, keep it going, Wendy.
Wrap it up, Wendy.
Right. Again, the COVID-19 vaccine. I mentioned this earlier. If you've not gotten it since September, there is an updated vaccine with the latest COVID-19 variant. I feel like maybe relating this to the flu vaccine and how we have a new flu vaccine based on the variants that are in circulation. So we take information from the Southern Hemisphere, their flu season is before ours, and say, okay, this is what we saw happening. So let's tailor our vaccine to match what is going to be in circulation. That's what we're doing with the COVID-19 vaccine. We're, again, constantly updating it, making it more effective and more, what's the word I'm looking for? Match better what is actually circulating out there so that it does prevent disease in a more effective way. Vaccines.gov is a great resource. You're able to find the COVID-19 vaccine. You can find flu shots there as well. So please refer people to that website if they're looking for a place to get vaccinated. Okay.
I think we also want to mention that it is, according to the CDC, it is safe and completely acceptable to receive multiple immunizations at the same time. I know you've already touched on it, but the COVID-19 and flu vaccines are perfectly fine to be given at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, who has time for two separate visits? I don't have time for that.
Girl, certainly not me. Okay, so we want to touch on some of the hard to answer questions that you're hearing. We're going to kind of dive right in. These are kind of the myths and misconceptions that we've been hearing surrounding vaccines. I would really, really love, we've got like 70 people here right now. I'd love for you to start utilizing that chat, put some stuff in that you've been hearing about. Laura is working in the chat box, so she also is going to be able to respond to some of those things that you are seeing. But also I'd like you to start using that chat box because it helps other clinicians understand or sympathize, empathize with some of the other misconceptions that they've been hearing as well. So go ahead and put those in the chat box. Use your own experience to think about how you would talk to parents or encourage them to vaccinate. Because remember that you are a professional and valued opinion in the lives of both your family and in your workplace. And so we want you to be able to take advantage of that. Okay, go right ahead. All right, so let's talk about the vaccine or the journey of a vaccine, excuse me. A couple of you and some of your friends, a couple you are friends with tell you that they worry newer vaccines are not safe. They worry that the pharmaceutical companies make vaccines without testing them before they're given to kids and adults. What resources do you have available to help them with their concerns? Okay, so some key points. Before a new vaccine is ever given to anybody, extensive lab testing is done that can take several years. Once testing in people begins, it can take several more years before clinical studies are complete and the vaccine is licensed. The FDA sets rules for 3 phases of clinical trials to ensure the safety of the volunteers, and researchers test vaccines with adults first. The FDA and the CDC closely monitor vaccine safety after the public begins using the vaccine. And the purpose of the monitoring is to watch for any adverse events, so like possible side effects. Monitoring a vaccine after it is licensed helps ensure that possible risks associated with the vaccine are identified. I want to show you this quick video here on the next slide. This is, I believe, Dr. Paul Offit, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's not actually. This is a really cool this is a really cool video that talks about the journey of a vaccine. I really hope this works.
Journey of your child's vaccine. A vaccine must be safe and effective. How a new vaccine is developed, approved, and manufactured. Vaccines begin the journey in the laboratory, where scientists work to figure out how best to protect against dangerous germs. Before a new vaccine is made available to the public, researchers usually must do years of lab tests on the vaccine. If lab results look promising and the vaccine appears to be both safe and effective, volunteers will be enrolled to get the vaccines in a series of carefully monitored clinical trials. The manufacturer usually conducts 3 phases of clinical trials. Each phase is designed to gather more information about the vaccine safety and how well it works. These trials can take years to complete. During phase 1, about 20 to 100 healthy adults get the vaccine. Researchers track how well the vaccine works, whether it's safe, what is the correct dose for disease protection, and what possible serious side effects may occur. In phase 2, hundreds of volunteers participate. This is when experts learn more about the possible short-term side effects and how the volunteers' immune systems are responding. Phase 3 trials are the most informative, with results from hundreds or even thousands of volunteers. In these trials, vaccinated volunteers are compared with volunteers who receive another vaccine or no vaccine. These results give researchers a better idea of how well the vaccine works and if there are possible side effects they should expect. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, along with the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, review all of the data the researchers have gathered throughout the trials and decide whether or not to license the vaccine. Once licensed, vaccines are made in batches called lots. Manufacturers test the lots to make sure the vaccines are safe, pure, and potent. The FDA reviews the safety and quality of each lot before it is released. The FDA inspects manufacturing facilities on a regular basis to ensure quality and safety. How a vaccine is added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. Once the FDA licenses a vaccine, CDC brings together the members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, to review all of the research available on the licensed vaccine. The members of the ACIP include world-renowned vaccine and disease experts from groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Family Physicians, CDC, and other government agencies. These experts look at how well the vaccine works and whether it's safe when given to different age groups. They also weigh the seriousness of the disease the vaccine prevents and figure out how many children would get sick if they did not get vaccinated. The experts then decide if they should recommend that vaccine be added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. If the CDC approves the experts' recommendations, the vaccine officially becomes part of the schedule, and soon it will be available at your healthcare provider's office. How a vaccine's safety continues to be monitored. Once children start getting the vaccine, the FDA and CDC continue to watch for possible side effects. Reactions that happen after a vaccination get reported to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or VAERS. Anyone can submit a report to VAERS, including parents, caregivers, patients, doctors, and nurses. However, the reactions that are reported may or may not be caused by the vaccines. They may require further investigation. Researchers at FDA and CDC analyze the VAERS reports and look for any trends that may be happening. FDA and CDC also use other vaccine safety systems. The Vaccine Safety Data Link, or VSD, and the Post-Licensure Rapid Immunization Safety Monitoring System, or PRISM, actively monitor new vaccines to obtain additional information about their safety. VSD has access to healthcare information for over 24 million people. PRISM can analyze healthcare information from over 190 million people. CDC also uses the Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Project, or CISA, to study vaccine safety. CISA is a collaboration between CDC and 7 medical research centers. CISA vaccine safety experts conduct individual case reviews and clinical research studies about vaccine safety. Recommendations for using the vaccine may change if the vaccine's risks are found to be greater than its benefits. The end goal is always the same: to safely and effectively protect children, families, and communities against potentially serious diseases. For more information, please visit
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is an awesome video. It's got tons of information. As you can see, there are several agencies watching out for side effects and safety concerns with vaccines, not just the CDC and the FDA. There are several organizations that are making vaccine safety their top priority. So when we talk to parents, we can reassure them that vaccines are safe and effective. And I see a lot of people using that chat box. Keep going. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the one I was guilty of. The immunization conversation is that there are too many vaccines given. So mom and dad both think vaccines are good, but that babies get too many at one visit and their immune systems are still too new for so many. They plan to delay some vaccines and only get 2 at each visit. What are some things you can say to educate them and reassure them? And go ahead and put those answers in the chat box if you will, please. I have seen some really good suggestions on there, by the way. I saw one that said that one of the reassurances is that I have chosen to vaccinate my own kids. And for me, truly, that was reassuring. Let's see. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Next slide. Sorry, I was looking at my notes and making sure I didn't miss anything. And use, again, your own experiences to kind of discuss how you would handle these things in the chat. So some of the things that we want to make sure you're armed with is getting childhood vaccines is not an extra burden on the immune system, even for babies. Babies are exposed to hundreds of viruses and bacteria during normal activities like eating and playing. And if your kid is anything like any of my kids, it's not just eating and playing. There's nothing my kids do not put in their mouths. It is, I can't believe it. And even though kids receive more vaccines, they receive far fewer antigens overall compared to their parents and grandparents. Our children are now protected against more diseases too. Next slide. I really want to make sure we get to these videos. Let's watch this short video by Dr. Paul Offit. It's helpful to know what to say to parents when they bring these things up. And let's see, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center here at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. The most common question that we get asked here at the center is, do babies get too many vaccines? It's an understandable question. In the first few years of life, babies get vaccines to prevent 14 different infections. That can mean as many as 27 inoculations during that first few years of life. It can mean as many as 6 shots at one time. And I don't care how smart you are about viruses or immunology, it's hard to watch your baby go through that. So the question is it too many? Well, so let's take a step back. When babies are in the womb, they're in a sterile environment. When they enter the birth canal and the world, they're not. And very quickly, they have living on the surface of their body trillions of bacteria. I'm not just trying to sound like Carl Sagan here, literally trillions of bacteria. You actually have roughly 100 trillion bacteria on the surface of your body. That's more than you have cells in your body. Now, each single bacterium has between 2,000 and 6,000 immunological components. Now, by immunological component, what I mean is the complex sugar that sits on the outside of the bacteria, so-called polysaccharide, or the proteins that make up the bacteria. Viruses also have proteins, and those are considered also immunological components. Now, if you add up all the immunological components that are currently contained in vaccines, it adds up to about 160. So think about that, 160 immunological components, which consist of viral proteins, bacterial proteins, or bacterial polysaccharides, as compared to the trillions of bacteria, each bacterium of which contains 2,000 to 6,000 immunological components. So I think literally what you are exposed to in vaccines is a drop in the ocean compared to what you're exposed to in daily life. Frankly, I think a cut on your knee is a greater challenge to your immune system than are vaccines. I think the common cold, which can reproduce itself thousands of times in your body is a greater challenge to your immune system than vaccines. So I think the short answer to the question, can babies tolerate so many vaccines given in the first few years of life, is yes, because frankly, they encounter far more in their environment than they're ever going to encounter in vaccines. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. If you want to move on to the next misconception.
Yes, thanks, Kai. So this is one that we've already heard in this group, which is, you know, indicative of how common this is. So this misconception, a mom of a 13-month-old toddler is sharing in her mom's group that her baby is not the same as she was before her MMR shot. She's worried that the shot caused harm and wants to warn others about vaccines and autism. And moms groups on Facebook and, you know, social media in general are not always the best place for accurate information. So we do have a lot of resources because this is something that is quite common. Let me get this slide. So some of the comments, there's some of the ways you can address this, that autism usually becomes apparent around the same age that MMR is given. So just because it happens at the same time doesn't mean that one thing caused another. When your baby turns 1, which is when they get that first MMR, they're starting to kind of become individual little people. You know, they're not babies anymore. They have their own opinions about everything, and, you know, no is their favorite word, and they're moving around and just kind of having their own personalities. So that is a lot of times when the first symptoms of autism are apparent. And we don't know what causes autism, but we know that it's probably has multiple components, including a genetic component. So Dr. Offit, again, does a really great job of explaining this. And some of these, you know, are pretty scientific, but if you want to kind of get more familiar with it, he just, I think he does a great job of explaining it. So.
Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I think probably one of the most common concerns parents have about vaccines is, do they cause autism? Certainly very easy to find that contention on the internet and in chat rooms, so it can be scary. And I think from the parent standpoint, they argue this: look, my child was fine, they got a vaccine, now they develop signs and symptoms of autism. Could the vaccine have done it? Well, the good news is that's an answerable question. And it's really been in 3 different areas that this issue has been raised. One is the concern that the combination measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR vaccine caused autism. The second is the notion that there was an ethyl mercury containing preservative that was in a number of vaccines. Now it's only in some multi-dose vials of influenza vaccine called thimerosal. And then the third sort of concern is that children are just getting too many vaccines too soon, that that's somehow weakening or overwhelming or perturbing their immune system. Well, these are studyable questions. You can answer this question. So, for example, in the case of measles, mumps, and rubella, there now have been 18 studies done in 7 different countries on 3 different continents involving hundreds of thousands of children who either did or didn't get the MMR vaccine, making sure that those 2 groups are otherwise similar with regard to their healthcare seeking behavior, their socioeconomic background, their medical background. And again and again and again, those studies all found the same thing, that the MMR vaccine did not cause autism. And that's been true also for these other 2 concerns. The good news is I think most parents get this. I think most parents believe these studies because a recent study by the Autism Science Foundation found that about 85% of parents of children with autism now are comfortable that vaccines weren't the cause. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to quickly go past this. We just because we're running out of a little bit of time, but there is some good information there if you want to go back. We have another video by Dr. Offit, so please, when these are posted, if you've got a few minutes, please go in and listen to this about natural infection versus natural infection, immunity from natural infection versus immunity from a vaccination. So this is a really good explanation of that. There we go.
Okay, back to me to wrap up. It's very important that you find reliable resources, that you know where to turn to, and you know how to distinguish what's a great source for your information. So here on our website, this form is listed on the right. There's a whole list of different websites, books, different apps, videos, places that you can trust that they base their information on science and not opinion. So that is available on our website. And then the next slide. A lot of the videos today came from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. They are a really great resource for vaccine education. They have multiple videos and handouts, information sheets, all kinds of different things available on there. And then we also recommend going to the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That is the most trusted source of information. A lot of the questions that you may get, you can definitely find an answer on their website, along with the current immunization schedules. 2024 has a new immunization schedule for children and also adults. So you'll want to make sure that you are referring, excuse me, you're referring to the most updated information. Next slide. And of course, TAPI, we have a lot of resources here at TAPI. Our website is whyimmunize.org. And then we also have this handout on the left. It's common questions that you may hear. Some of the ones we talked about today, and then also some other ones. And then there's talking points on there, how you can talk to parents about vaccines, how you can answer their questions. There were some great questions in the chat today. But don't be afraid to talk about vaccines or share your own experience about vaccines. All of those things are great and can really help people make an informed decision about whether or not to vaccinate their child. Next slide. TAPI has a lot of great resources available to you. All of these are free and available on our website. You can download them and print them from your own computer, or we are happy to mail them to you for free. A lot of people pick what works best for their community, and they will put up a flyer in their exam room. This one on the bottom right is very popular if there are kids around. Just a really great reminder about how to stop the spread of germs, especially during respiratory illness season. Cover your cough, wash your hands, all of that. We are finalizing a new one for respiratory illness season, talking about the different vaccines that are available. So watch for that. And then we have ones targeted at flu. We have COVID vaccine flyers. And then also different stages of life. So we have a flyer that talks about all different stages of life from birth through older adult, and it will show you which vaccines you need at which age, and that is constantly updated. And we also have, flyers for teens or college students, things to remind you to prevent the flu, all kinds of different resources. Those are available on our website. Next slide. And my favorite program that I know about is the Vaccines for Children program. This offers free vaccines to people who are uninsured or underinsured. It's really important that cost is never a deciding factor in whether or not to get a child immunized. So many providers around the state and also our health department, our county health departments, they have Vaccines for Children program available there. So make sure that you let all the parents that you're working with know about this program So it's amazing. It's an amazing program.
Laura, you accidentally muted yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our presenters today. Wendy and Kai, great job. It's always great to hear your experiences, and you make the time just fly right by. We're at time right now, but please make sure to fill out a survey to be entered to win a prize. So let us know how the training went today, anything we can change for next time. Your feedback helps us improve. And then if you are a nurse, medical assistant, social worker, community health worker, we have a lot of different CEU opportunities for you. So please fill out that survey if you would like to have that credit for attending today. You must have attended 90% of the training to get that credit. Next slide. And I think that's it. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day, and make sure to keep our state healthy by getting immunized. I will send a follow-up email with these links in it as well, and also to the website where you can find all the resources from today. And that's it. Have a great day.